In an article published by the Hindustan Times dated 6 September 2020, it was reported that despite the ban on sand mining by the Punjab government during the monsoon, there were many reports of illegal sand mining in some parts of the state. Now, sand is an important resource. It forms a major portion of constructions and buildings and is also used in making glass. And due to its constant high demand, the problem which often pops up when talking about sand mining is illegal sand mining, which is carried out without permissions and clearances from the necessary authorities. Now, I just mentioned that there are permissions and clearances needed to mine sand legally, but as the news suggested, it hasn't really been effective at doing that. But why is that the case? What are these policies and regulations anyway? And why is there a lack of compliance when it comes to sand mining? Let's try and find out. Sand is notified as a minor mineral under Section 3E of the Mines and Mineral Development and Regulation Act 1957. And according to Section 15 of the same Act, states have been granted regulatory authority over sand mining, which means that they make their own rules and guidelines for their respective states. And with the intention of preventing illegal sand mining and regulating it, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change have issued enforcement and monitoring guidelines for sand mining earlier in January 2020. The objectives of these guidelines are identification and quantification of mineral resource and its optimal utilization, to regulate the sand and gravel mining in the country since its identification to its final end use by the consumers and the general public, use of IT-enabled services and latest technologies for surveillance of the sand mining at each step, reduction in demand and supply gaps, setting up the procedure for replenishment study of sand, post-environmental clearance monitoring, procedure for environmental audit to control the instance of illegal mining. A predecessor to this is the Sustainable Sand Mining Management Guidelines 2016, whose objectives were oriented, as the name suggests, towards sustainable and socially responsible mining in sand, but failed to make any meaningful impact. Now, for the mining part of the operation, the person overseeing the mining should comply with the mining plan and procedures of the respective state government, conduct an environmental audit at least once a year, and file compliance reports. But where self-compliance fails to mitigate the issue, punitive measures need to be looked at, hence the enforcement and monitoring guidelines. The judiciary has also contributed to the same, an example being creating a backdoor entry into environment impact assessment process by mandating EIA procedure for sand mines even below 5 hectares, which would otherwise have been exempted. Despite extensive guidelines by the central government, coupled with state-wise regulatory mechanisms, there have been many occasions on which illegal sand mining is in the news, and even before the courts. But why is that the case? One big reason for the lack of compliance is the extremely high demand for sand. According to the sand mining framework released by the government in 2018, there was an estimated demand of 700 million tons of sand in 2017 and was projected to grow at a rate of 6 to 7% annually. The major part of this demand comes from the construction sector, as sand plays a huge role in construction and allied activities. Another reason for the same could be the complicated procedure to be followed and the number of people from the lower economic bracket dependent on sand mining. This could be better understood by looking at what happened in the state of Andhra Pradesh. The sudden introduction of the enforcement and the regulatory mechanisms from the free sand policy affected the supply chain and the people dependent on it. One obvious reason is the administrative failure, wherein curbing the activity does not happen as proactively as expected. The lack of technology also affects their monitoring capabilities. Though there has been news of a technology from ISRO to help in monitoring and mitigating sand mining, we are yet to see any tangible results out of it. The present state of compliance by the various state governments can be better understood by looking at the recent report submitted by the Oversight Committee to the NGT in lieu of the case National Green Tribunal Bar Association vs Virendra Singh, where the court has taken into account illegal sand mining in Uttar Pradesh. These reports highlight how certain state governments have complied with the Union Ministry's guidelines and the other guidelines put forward by the courts. These reports highlight how, despite existing framework, care must be taken in preparing audits, district survey reports, demarcating boundaries for issuance of leases for mining, regulating riverbed mining, etc. The biggest challenge here is enforcement. Employment of better monitoring technologies and constant surveying would definitely prove to be beneficial. Another way to solve the issue is by looking at alternatives to sand in construction where it is mostly used. Artificial sand, copper slag, and few other substances are seen in recent trends as an alternative to riverbed sand. Importing sand from other nations is also an option, even though it's not a very cost-effective one. Using green approaches to infrastructure and better land use planning in urban areas also helps in reducing the pressure on sand, which could be a huge step to rein the rampant illegal sand mining in our country. What do you think about the different rules and regulations put forward by the central government and the courts to curb illegal sand mining? And how effective have they been? Let us know your thoughts in the comment box down below. You can follow us on our social media handles and our website for more such stories. The links are in the description. Stay safe, see you next time.